Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 3 and now we want to present about History of Textile Printing. Alright, first of all, I want to introduce my group members. So I was Dea Agus Edlina and my matrix number is 73262 and Nurjahan Faratul Syeda binti Kamarudin 73755 and also Nurin Nabila binti Ismail. Here are our presentation contents. So the first one is block printing, and the second one engraved roll printing, the third one hand screen printing, and last automatic flatbed printing. Alright, the first one is about block printing, a relief process. So block printing is one of the oldest type of printmaking. It existed as early as the 5th century. Actual fragments found from as early as the 15th, and it has been done around the world with roots in India, China, and Japan. So actually, block printing is also known as relief printing, which use a carved material such as wood, linoleum, and rubber. That material to transfer ink into fabric or paper. Actually it serves a kind of stamp with the final product, a mirror image of the carving. This different than letterpress, where the image is applied with enough pressure to leave an indent on the paper. Typically, it's done by hand. So the ink sits on the surface, adding a raised texture to the paper. And it's depending on the size of the knife and the quality of material. It's possible to capture a fine degree of detail in each print. However, since the process is generally done by hand, no two prints are ever the same. So, this is a block printing process. First of all, we have to sketch the design, just like draw out the design on the block, and we can use digital tools like Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, which will very helpful, or just get with an old-fashioned by pencil or pen, just like traditional method, and just keep in your mind, it will print the mirror image from the design. And then we have to carve the design or block. Make sure carve away the parts that we want to print first, using gouge or knife, as the ink will be applied to the raised surface to the print the design. Be careful with thin lines, so it will time consuming because it's very detailed, but it's vital to you that you have to make it right and you have to be patient. And the third, ink the block. So you can apply some printing ink to a flat surface. Sometimes glass work well, and in roller over it until get a fine layer. Roll the brayer directly over the block until an even coat is applied. Some sites say that oil-based ink is the best coverage that will print well on both fabric and paper. and then print the image. On this tape, we can print either by hand or press. But if you don't have press available around you, you can also use the back of a large spoon or by an expensive roller, or we can call it brayer. Place the paper over the ink block and roll it out with roller. Make sure applying the pressure evenly. So you have to be patient of it, since the color will be stronger in some areas of the print. So make sure you are make it with the fine same texture. And last but not least, we can retouch or keep printing. It is often the case that our mistake in the first printing of a block, but you can also always go back and carve a bit more material to fix any error or modify the design. But in case you happy with your result, your end result, the same block you can use to print countless copies. In the case of reduction prints, once you finish your series of prints, you will carve the next layer out of the same block. So, it is 4 types of block. The first one is wooden block. The second one is wooden felt blocks. The third one is metal blocks. And last is case or stereo blocks. Wooden blocks. Actually, this is on the oldest type of block printing, with the image carved out of a solid piece of wood. This is a broad category that includes many specific techniques. So, in this method, the logs of wood are sliced horizontally and cut into pieces according to the size of the design on the blocks. With it have maximum size, which is 6 inch in diameter or 1.5 inch thickness. The trick working with wood is using a hard, tight-grained material. Porous woods like oak and soft woods like pine and cedar are less suitable, as they won't retain such fine detail. Fruit woods like pear and cherry are common historical choice based on the others, but many more types are viable when mounted on a polywood base. And then wooden felt blocks. This wooden felt block is actually like the pattern are first drawn on wood, then carved and mounted on handles. The blocks are dipped in non-toxic ink, then stamped by hand on large pieces of fabric. There are typically several patterns block used, and since it's done by hands and the image never line up perfectly, this is one of the main ways to tell hand block print fabric from screen or a digitally print alternative. Okay, and then the metal blocks. For making these metal blocks is for making integrated pattern and getting high level of clarity in prints. Metal blocks are used. These blocks are made by engraving thin sheets of evenly cut metal strips into the wooden blocks. The metal strips are beaten to make them thin, and then strips are cut of even length. The design is drawn on the wooden block, and the metal strips are pressed onto the design by gentle hammering. Filling of the design is done from center outside. Once metal blocks are checked, so the strips are of the same height from the wooden base. So actually, these metal blocks are costly, time-consuming, but long-lasting because it's made of metal. And the weight of the metal provides an elegant impression, which provides visual impact when worked in black, or subtle fineness when worked to modify dyes. And last, cast or stereo blocks. This stereotype is a duplicate of a block or type ramp, and is made by making a mold from the original, and from this mold casting a plate of metal, rubber, or plastic. It is essential that before a mold can be taken, all printing surfaces are typified. Any damage lines in the type or block will be duplicated in the stereo, so it is wise to replace them before making the mold. The molding material is known as either wet or dry flock. So actually, wet flock flong is made from layers of blotting paper and tissue, and it's prepared for use prior to the mold being made, and is beaten into the form with a stiff brush. And the dry flong is machine-made sheets, and it's molded in a press. This mold is formed by either of these two methods, and this is then prepared for casting by trimming all the excess mold away, then pasting a lip of brown paper and packing out a mold. So the second one is engraved roller printing. So on engraved roller printing, it have intaglio method. So actually, this intaglio print method of printing is the opposite of the relief printing of block printing, which these printing methods done from ink that is below the surface of the plate. So actually, the design is cut, stretch, or etched into the printing surface or plate, which can be copper, zinc, aluminum, magnesium, plastic, or even coat paper. The printing ink is rubbed into the incision of or groove, and the surface is wiped clean. So this is the roller printing have four methods. The first one is hand engraving. The second one is machine engraving. The third one, pantograph engraving. And the last one is photography engraving. So what is the difference? Let's check out. The first one is about hand engraving. Hand engraving is printing ink, rub or roll into the cuts. Then the metal plate, or often copper, is wiped over so that the ink is held only in the cuts. Then paper is placed over the plate and a layer of felt over that. It is then rolled through a printing machine under pressure. The paper is pressed into the ink held in engraved line, so it's transferring into the paper. The second one is machine engraving. So actually, it is a multiple copies can be taken from a printing plate. So this is a good method. So the laser produce product with precision and flexibility. The laser beam melts the material while cutting and result in clean, perfectly sealed edges. Laser engraving creates a tangible tactile effect. In this way, end products can be given a special finish. As a result, the material is not warped. The laser beam melts the material, and the result are clean, perfectly sealed edge. And then pantograph print engraving. So the pantograph is a linkage consisting of 5 links connected with pin joints to form revolute pairs. It is connected in a manner based on parallelogram so that the movement of one point in tracing an image produce potential movement by second point. These methods include the removal of the surface matter by using proper tool in order to obtain desirable shape on the surface. The working principle from this method is engraving machine, which based on 4-bar mechanism in which one link is fixed and other links are pivot. And last but not least is photographic engraving. So on this method, the plate is flooded with a low viscosity or thin ink, then wipe with a doctor blade to remove any ink adhering to the surface. The doctoring action leaves the inside intactly image filled with ink. Later, as paper is brought into contact with this image and pressure is applied. Surface tension and capillary action first cause the ink to transfer from the plate to the paper. So for the next slide will be continued by Jehan.
Next, the characteristic of engraved roller printing. The first characteristic is that the cloth can be printed in large quantities. Second one, the faulty joints at the repeats never occur and joint marks are totally absent in this method. Fine sharp outlines and subtle graduations of tint and stipple can be produced by these methods, which are impossible by block printing techniques. Half-tone effects can also be produced by using this method. And the last one, the repeat of the design in roller printing is limited to the size of the roller. For the disadvantages of engraved roller printing, the first one, the method is not economical for short runs of fabric. It is also difficult to produce blotch design. The number of colors used for printing a pattern is usually limited to 4 or 6. And the repeat of design in roller printing is limited to the size of the roller. So those are the disadvantages of the engraved roller printing. Next, we're gonna go to the hand screen printing. So for the history of stencil printing, stenciling is a technique for recreating designs in the visual arts that involves flowing ink or paint over holes made in cardboard or metal on the surface to be painted. Stencils had been known in China since the 8th century, and Eskimo on Baffin Island were using stencils cut from sealskins to make prints before coming into touch with Western civilization. So, in the next slide, we are going to talk about the hand screen printing process. There are many processes for this hand screen printing. So the first one, we are going to talk about the process of preparing the screen. So for this type of screen, which is clean screen, the first step we have to do is to wet the screen with water using spray gun and apply degreaser on the first side of the screen. Second, we need to scrub screen in circular motion, covering entire surface area. And we have to repeat this process by applying degreaser again for the second side of the screen and let it for 2 minutes. And then lastly, we need to rinse the screen until all degreaser is removed. we need to use compressed air after that to dry the screen. For the frame emulsion coating, the first one, load emulsion into scoop coater, which is the load amount commensurate with number of screen. Then we need to tilt scoop coater such that lead edge creates an even bead of emulsion across the bottom of the narrow edge of screen. The third one, with a consistent pressure and motion, move scoop coater up the screen, leaving an even thin film of emulsion. And then we have to repeat process 2 times front side and 1 time at the back side. Okay, so for the next process, after we prepare the screen, we have to let the screen expose. So this process is called screen exposure. So for the first step, you have to position artwork on screen frame such that image is right reading as you look through the squeegee side of the screen frame. Once artwork is properly positioned, tape top right or left corner to screen using 3M clear tape. Then place screen frame onto exposure unit with print side down. Close and lock down exposure frame and check exposure time. Then turn on exposure frame vacuum. When screen frame is completely pulled to glass, frame is ready for exposure. After that, we have to turn on the exposure lamp. Once exposure is complete, turn off vacuum and open exposure frame and remove art from screen frame. Then, we need to remove unexposed emulsion by first rinsing printing side a screen frame with warm water spray nozzle in wash up booth and repeat for squeegee side. Next, we need to cure emulsion by turning on light in wash up booth. Let it cure for 15 seconds only. And then, we have to follow emulsion cure stage and re-rinse screen frame. Print side first followed by squeegee side and let it dry. Once screen frame is dry, it is ready for the next stage, which is printing. So for the next process, after preparing the screen, then we have screen exposure. So for the next one is, of course, we are going to go to the process of screen printing. So for the first step, the squeegee first pass of ink firmly through screen onto test material. Follow with imaging coat by applying consistent firm pressure while squeegeeing across screen. So for this method, the screen printing, the most important thing is that we must have consistent pressure when we're doing it. So make sure that we have consistent pressure in order to get great result for the screen printing. Okay, so for the second step, we need to repeat for each station as required and move the bead of float coat toward operator. Then we need to tilt the squeegee 45 degrees away from operator toward clamp. Lastly, we just turn on drying unit to warm up device. And there you go, we can have that our screen printing is done already. Okay, so why is it used for small quantity printing only? So for the first reason is that this hand screen printing is a very expensive process. So that's why we only use it for small quantity printing only, because it is very, very expensive. And it is also time consuming to make each screen and then load them onto the machine for each color and as such it would be unproductive to put in that amount of work into producing a few custom t-shirts as opposed to a large batch order. That is why this hand screen printing is is not used for a large quantity, because it is time consuming and expensive, definitely. So these are the two main reasons why it is used for small quantity printing.
So now let's move on to the part 3, which is automatic flat bed printing. So from this topic, I'm gonna cover the history of the flatbed printing, why flatbed printing more successful from the rotary printing, the process of the flatbed printing, design characteristic and limitation of the flatbed printing, and also the country and company that manufacture the machine. So, the first is the history of the flatbed printing. The flatbed printing is the process or the technique of printing using the flatbed printer or flatbed UV printer where an image is directly printed onto large variety of substrate. Can use at any type of material like glass, wood, leather, PVC, metal and etc. This process of printing different from the other process printing, which is the ink use, also the curing process. Other than that, flatbed digital printer use the ink made from acrylic monomer, and when it's exposed to the UV light sources, the monomer cure. Other than that also, this printing method evolved from the flatbed printing press. This flatbed printing press was invented by German inventor Friedrich Koenig in 1811. So now let's move on to the why is flatbed printing more successful from the rotary printing. So the first reason why flatbed printing is more successful than the rotary printing, the first is the smoothness of and the sharpness of the design in flatbed is much higher than the rotary printing. Second is the fabric wastage that occur during the setting of the fabric for the printing is much lower than the rotary printing. And other than that, also the cost for the flatbed screen is less than the rotary printing, which is around 3 until 4K. For the rotary printing, it's around 5 until the 6K. Other than that reason, flatbed machine printing is profitable for short quantity production, while for the rotary printing, they are unprofitable for the short quantity production. Then the screen preparation for the flatbed screen is much easy than the rotary. Other than that, the flatbed screen printing machine can print any design like the sari, 3 pieces, orna, bedsheet, and so on. So now let's move on to the process of flatbed printing. So as you can see in this slide, this is the example how the flatbed printings looks like in the textile. So there consists a few parts like the printing table, conveyor, the number of screens, special mechanism for lowering the screen on the requirement part of the fabric sequence driven by motor, a special conveyor under the table to collect extra paste, and also an arrangement for gumming the fabric to the conveyor belt and a dryer. So the first step for the printing, for the flatbed printing, the first is the fabric is brought to the printing table through the feeding arrangement and gummed to the conveyor belt on the table. An endless conveyor belt to bring the fabric on the table under the screen periodically. The second step is two shaft pedal is used in which the bottom shaft rotates in a gum box and transmit the gum onto the top shaft, which transfer is to the conveyor belt. The third is the conveyors bring the fabric periodically under the screen and stop, while the screen are lowered on the required part of the fabric by a special mechanism. The sequence make one or more strokes over the screen, after which its screen are lifted again. The next step is the sequence is pressed to the screen by the dynamometer placed at the both ends of the sequence holder. The next step also is one or more stroke of the sequence ensures simultaneously printing on the pattern by the common action of all screens, each of which apply in printing paste as required by the color in the design. The seventh step is the The seventh step is extra piece is collected by the special conveyor running under the table, and the last step is after printing, the fabric is dried by passing through a hot air chamber. The conveyor returns to its original position where it is washed and dried, and a new fabric is gummed on it. For the addition, this is the term used in the process like the feeding. Feeding is device consists of two guided roller of plate manufactured by metal or rubber coated and tension roller to maintain the fabric flow in the creased form. The gumming device consists two rubber coated roller. One is dipped in gumming tank to apply gum in another roller which is attached to the blanket. Next is printing table or system. The cast iron bed or wooden bed duly machine cut rests on heavy-duty cast iron structure to ensure vibration-free operation. Glove feeding in tensionless with expander or glove guiding arrangement permanently. Gumming arrangement can be given with electrical heater. The next is blanket washing unit. Two nests of brush roll are driven by AC electric motor and they are housed in a SS tank. Special design sequence also attached. The last is dryer. Dryer is the high capacity float dryer with such suitable jet radiator, fan assembly and insulating panel give quick and even drying for all type of print. The dryer capacity can be increased by adding extra dryer modulus. So the next subtopic is design characteristic and limitation. This is some of the flatbed printer that I found in the market. There are a few types like the hybrid flatbed printer, UV flatbed printer, flatbed inkjet printer, and also textile flatbed printer. So the first picture is the textile flatbed printer. The second is hybrid flatbed printer, and the third is UV flatbed printer, and the last is inkjet flatbed printer. So the limitation of the flatbed printer, first is large volume costs more. The second is lower productivity. The third is more difficult material handling, and the fourth is the color or ink limitation, and the fifth is weaker in three technologies, which is ink printing vertical stripe is cannot done. The reverse or disperse printing is also cannot done, and for the time for color separation is also cannot done. So this is the characteristic of the flatbed printer. The first is printer can print white color for 3 have white UV ink and can print out image with embossed effect. The second is printer can print on any material directly without coating, no need a pre-treatment, expect metal, glass, and ceramic. After that, the UV drain is also dry immediately. So the last part is the country and company that manufactures the machine. So the first machine is the Roland Versailles UV LEJ 640 FT. This is manufactured by the Roland DG Corporation, and the origin country for this machine is Japan. The second is Ricoh Pro T7210 UV. The country that manufactures this machine is the Singapore, and the company that manufactures is Ricoh Asia Pacific Pte Ltd. The third is the Mimaki GFX 200 2531. The country origin of this machine is Japan, and the company that manufactures this machine is Mimaki. The last is the Canon Arizona 6170 XTS. The country that manufactures this machine is also the Singapore, and the company that responsibility for the manufacturing this machine is the Canon Singapore Pte Ltd. I think that's all from me and us. Thank you.